Well, I'm showing 7 o'clock p.m. Irish time. Is it?
Yeah.
Great,
Yes.
great. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll wait a minute or two, but if you have a chance, go into the chat area and you can see I posted a few images. One is about the education program launch for AE, George Russell Society. And then another one, I have a yellow door welcoming you. So ideally, I would have been opening the door. I think what I'll do to start is, first of all, thank you all for being here and uh, encourage you, since this is a salon, I can't be serving you something to drink, but if
Oh,
you'd like to get a cup of tea or coffee, do that. I have some sparkling water. I just want you to be comfortable and enjoy this hour that we have together. I thought we would start out with an overview of how this conversation will proceed. I have some announcements I'll make, and then I'd like to do some introductions, and then we'll get into talking about the readings. So, welcome to our inaugural AE George Russell Society Educational Outreach Program. This is really exciting. We're going to be doing this the second Monday of every month, at least this month, next month, and the month following. So if you look at the chat, the last item I posted shows you what's coming up next month and then the following month. So Raymond O'Kieran is going to be leading a discussion, 1890s, the hero and man. And then after that, in December on the 8th, is Patrick O'Donnell, Professor Patrick O'Donnell, talking about Plotinus and AE. So just some really good readings and discussions we're going to be having. I forgot to mention Raymond's event is on the 10th of November. So same time, 7 o'clock. So I thought that would be helpful for you. Because this is a conversation today, I'm looking forward to having lots of voices weaving in and out. And I hope we can create a really lovely tapestry by the end of the day. So I'd like to hear from you. It's up to you if you want to be unmuted the whole time or not be. Sometimes there's reverb. So if we get that, then I guess I'd say mute it. But don't feel you have to raise your hand. I think we're with friends, so you can just say Joan here or whatever, or even interrupt a little. That's how a conversation might take place. Though I think we'll be good listeners and then know when to speak. I probably won't be tracking the chat a lot. So if someone would help me with that and maybe say somebody's commented, that would be really helpful. So I thought what we do is go around and say our names and let us know where in the world you are, and maybe tell us what brought you here today. And in particular, I'm curious, AE is such a myriad-minded man. If you could share with us, are there certain facets of AE that you're really drawn to? So if anyone wants to just jump in.
well, since I'm the shyest person in here, I'd probably start it off like. So my name's Jim Conway, and myself and Michael, who'll be introducing himself later, we came upon a Russell sort of. Uh, we just tripped over him more or less. But he has been little known in Lurgan. There was a blue plaque of him in Lurgan, and very few people knew about him. Dazzy might have known him before me. Actually, I'm not sure. Dazzy will be talking to you later. Um, But it's all our town is the most divided town in Ireland, and it's almost a dreamt up this guy to try and unite the town and bring it together. There's absolutely nothing I can say bad about him. Wonderful, inspirational man, and I did with the school. The big school has just opened there. It's amalgamated three schools. It's in Romans. It's called the Library, reading room after A. Russell. And we did, believe it or not, Raymond, we did a series of lectures there for the different people coming in it, and it was on the theme of the hero and the man, and how he had found that hero in, first of all, in W.B. Yeats, and then in Joyce and Patrick Kavanagh and a whole raft of the Irish literary revival. So I'm not hogging anymore. Let somebody else get something to say. Okay.
I'm happy enough to follow on from that there, Jim, as another native of Lurgan. We actually moved to William Street, where the blue plaque was, and when I was in was late. I think I was about 10 whenever we moved into William Street. So my father was very mindful of the history of the town and so on. And he would have kept us informed, about AE and told us for to look him up and be mindful of him. Uh, so I ended up in the early 80s doing a degree in fine art in the University of Ulster. And as my finishing dissertation, I actually focused on the paintings, or well, the artwork of A. Russell, which I knew very, very little about. And to be honest, the type of art that he had produced wasn't really to my liking. But the more I read about him, the more that I got into him and began to understand where he was coming from, and also developing my own interest in Irish mythology, and particularly the Gaelic revival of that uh, time in literature and art and in the language. When I look back on the dissertation now, it's very naive because we're going back, way over 40 years ago. But it was an introduction. I haven't done an awful lot since. But I was talking to, I'd actually seen a couple of Jim's events. And my wife had gone to them because I wasn't able to go. And so it was always in my mind for to get back into it. So Jim shared some material with me recently, and I noticed that this event was coming up. So it says it's not an opportunity for to be missed. Thanks very much, Joan, for putting it on.
Thank you.
My name is Michael from Wexford, southeast of Ireland, and I suppose like so many people, I just seem to have been tripping over AE for an awful long time before I really knew any of the depth, particularly in relation to his spiritual side, which would interest me particularly. But I would have been coming across him for many decades at this point. I suppose my background would have been in the trade union movement. And of course, I would have been very familiar, being from Dublin originally, of his famous letter to the employers of Dublin during the Great Lockout of 1913. And then his involvement in the design of the Plough on the Stars, which led me into his artwork. In my own studies of art, I clearly came across him and seen so many of his works. And then again, over time, stumbling on his paintings in Lissadell and in Huntington Castle, he just kept appearing. So I did have a very particular interest in Yeats, and wouldn't particularly have known the connection between Yeats and AE. So quite obviously, that was a major opening and introduction. And there was no study of Yeats without having an even greater in-depth study of AE. So it's been a fascinating journey, and seeing my own research has been into the magical workings of Yeats, which thankfully the Sally and James North have made a tremendous contribution to, and also my own interest in Ella Young, which would have seen quite strong connections. And in reading some of the work for tonight, I see that mentions there of Kilmashogue Mountain, which I know quite well, both it and Malin Mountain, where Ella would have visited regularly. So that's me. Thanks. Thanks for hosting this, Joan. Delighted to be here.
Thank you.
Can I give my contribution? Arthur Russell, by the surname, we can claim some relationship with the AE way back. I think I was trying to do a count on how many times removed. I think it's about 4. But we share great grandfathers and with AE, and I live in Athboy in County Meath, and the McKernan brothers made contact with me, and I think Jim Conway was also very instrumental in making contact 3-4 years ago to inform us that we were related to A.E. Russell. And since then, I actually worked in the cooperative business. So we have that. It's not a genetic share, but it's a share in with A.E. Russell's life work and his thoughts on cooperation. I'm currently working on an article actually with Brian McKernan, and we've sent it for examination to direct descendants of A. Russell in the United States, in Portland, in Maine. And I just heard from them just this weekend. So hopefully we'll have the article edited and finished, and it brings all the elements of our relationship with the Meath Russells, with the Lurgan Russells, and hopefully that will be done in the next few weeks. Thank you.
I'll just pop on and say
Paul's
sorry,
trying to say something. Paul, you're muted, Paul. Paul was trying to say something there, but he's muted.
Paul, maybe if you go look in the bottom of your screen, there should be a little tab that shows up. It'll be audio, video, participants, chat. Maybe there you go. And then Fiona you'll go after Paul.
I'm a Lurgan, well, I'm a Lurgan man now. I was born in Ward Point and moved to Lurgan area when I was 7-year-old. Little story, back about 9 years ago, I was approached by Mr. Conway, and he says, Paul, do you know a man called A.E. Russell? And I had read a little bit of his poetry, but I hadn't got all that much information in my head. So he says, what do you want to do, Jim? He says, Paul, I want to get this off the ground. Will you help me? And I says, certainly. So we got involved along with Jim. And of course, once he brought on board a couple of them, of course, Michael McKernan, wonderful man, and then Brian, his brother, it sort of snowballed from that. Now, you asked the question, what draws me? Michael Wall, I think, M. Wall, that Michael, is it? I was involved in union as well, the union rep, and a chairman of the transport in general, but also withdrawn with the nature side of George. He really it triggered something within me. I carry out nature talks and also folklore talks and medieval talks way back, mystical talks, and that part of me really drew me towards George Russell. So that's me, Joan.
Thank you. Fiona, if you don't mind. Thanks for waiting.
Not at all. Thank you. So my name is Fiona. I am from Belfast. So it's been about 20 odd years since I first came across George Russell, and it was via a Yeats scholar at the time. And I found him incredibly interesting. It was Yeats's The Vision and The Golden Dawn first struck me, and then getting to know the aspects of George Russell was way more interesting. And then I did write my undergrad dissertation, my final dissertation, partially on George Russell. And the main ideas were around the subterranean and the symbol, so counterculture in response to this kind of symbolic order. So I have had an interest in him from then, really. And I learned about his artwork then and absolutely adore his artwork. I've also got a strong interest in the yogic tradition, which has obviously been, he was very ahead of his time in regards to that, and many other things. So he just seemed to me to be somebody who was very, anachronistic, out of his time, and it just speaks so much more to me. I think, it's very expansive and very universal, and that's something that I'm currently writing a PhD on another poet, and the way he represents universal aspects to me is very, very inclusive, democratic, and also just the pure the way he always saw life, the colors and the kind of the the kind of visceral feel of his work has always appealed to me.
Thank you.
Will I come in next? I mean,
Please, Hugh.
well, just to say to you, librarians such as myself are dangerous people because they deal with a wide variety of information and generally speaking don't read it. So I'm coming to AE very humbly, particularly in the context of what some of the previous speakers have said about their long-term interest in AE. But I should say to you, in my life here in Dublin, on the east coast of Ireland, as opposed to the southeast, I perhaps want to point you in the dark nether regions of my room at all the books on the wall. There are many more books floating around on the left and right. One of the earliest writers I collected was AE, and I was particularly interested in Alan Denson's work on AE and his work on the letters and his work on the bibliography on AE. But I find as I grow older, and Joan is going to shut me up very quickly, I hope, you have to expand your mind. You have to look for explanations and meanings. And I just want to say, I don't believe I would be here today if it weren't for everything I've done in my life, the directions my life has taken, which is full of memories and reflections, concerns over routes I've taken. But guess what? I want to be here, and I'm glad I'm here. I should also add, in the context of what Arthur said about the cooperative movement, both my parents were Cork-born people, and I, amusingly, was the second-born son of two first-born parents. So just to put you into the context of what that means, always struggling for the extra bit of bread and attention. But my father had connections with, he was an advisor to certain aspects of the cooperative movement. That's really why I'm here today, you could say. all of what I've said. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll go next. So my name's Marianne, and I'm joining from Newry today. I'm originally from South Armagh. I first came across his artwork in Armagh County Museum And then that led me to look into his poetry a little bit more, loved his poetry. And like Michael Wall said, he's just been popping up everywhere since then. So yeah, I'm delighted that you're doing this evening, Joan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Was that me coughing my way in there? I'm Michael, one of the aforementioned McKernan brothers, like Jimmy from Lurgan, and a massive enthusiast of AE. I like the whole package. I like the art. I like the poetry. I like the journalism, the economics, all of it. I even like the mysticism, but I don't quite understand it, which is why I'm delighted, Joan, that you're putting on these talks, because I think just the more you dip into it, the more eventually the penny drops. So that's it. A enthusiast.
Michael, if you want to, you could provide a link to your books. You are more than someone who's enthusiastic. You are a scholar, a publisher. So please, I think it would be helpful for other people to see what you've done if they don't already know. But
I'd be delighted to do that if I knew how to do that.
If you can't do it, you can always send it to me and I'll send it to everyone later.
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
Maybe if I could come in, it's Raymond O'Keeran coming live from Armagh City. And I first came across AE when studying Irish language literature at college. He was mentioned regularly as somebody who had provided the context for the literary revival that the Irish language revival stemmed from. And, I'm always amazed at how multifaceted AE is. And it just when you just more and more is being revealed all the time, and I feel as though there are oceans and oceans still left to discover. So thank you, as others have said, Joan, for organising the first Salon.
Thank you.
I could speak next if that's okay. Thanks, John. Nice to see you again. I'm Patrick O'Donnell. I am the chair of the A. Russell Society in Dublin, and I organised the spring school and the summer school, and I helped set up this education program that Joan is doing the first iteration of. We have a huge world significant figure in A.E. Russell. I first came across him in the 80s with Augustine Martin's lectures in Lecture Theatre M at UCD. And so he has been of interest to me in various forms. We're taking on board raising the profile as a society over the next few years to A100. We've got funding from the Department of Foreign Affairs this year, and we hope to continue to create videos, articles, presentations, conferences, etc. as we go forward. We hope to launch the first A. Russell Journal of AE Studies next March. So there's so many different things that we're driving forward. The crucial point, though, is that AE as a mystical figure is part of the late wave of Romanticism that crashes on the shores of Ireland through the literary revival and through Irish cultural nationalism, and takes on that very unique Irish element. And he's at the center for many decades of all kinds of crucial debates of where Ireland is going. I think he becomes very relevant to those of us interested in Irish literary and cultural history in the 21st century. I'm originally from Dublin, but I'm coming to you from down the road from Joan in St. Paul, Minnesota, up the road, I suppose, Joan.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm very determined to be a catalyst and to shape the infrastructure and the platforms and the writing and the academic content, and to give it archival and serious import. And so while discussions are great, I also want the discussions to be threaded together into some sort of substantial record. So that's my viewpoint. Thanks.
Mary McKenna. I'm a retired architect. I live in Dunleary in Dublin, though I have connections northern, and I've been encountering AE over the last number of years, some of the things you've all mentioned, and including your public events that you've been hosting in the United Arts Club. I'm a member there, and I ran a group myself there for quite a few years called Mythic Links. And then locally here, the Friends of the Joyce Tower, we do a lot of reading of Joyce, and of course AE is very, very central in, he features in Ulysses, but he was well known to Joyce, and they have an interesting backstory. And then I have a good general interest in early Irish literature and the revival period, and I had done a couple of papers on that and the art, I suppose, and yeah, literature related to it. So a great general interest, and you've been doing great things over the years recently. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a few more people, and then we'll go to the next part of our conversation.
Looks like it's between me and Lucia. So you want to go first?
Oh, Mary, thank you. Okay. My name's Bridget, but I'm using my daughter's computer, so she's Lucia. Yeah. So that explains that. I'm from Armagh, and I came across as a teenager, and it's lovely paintings in the museum. They'd be exhibited now and again, and I loved the frolic, the happiness, and just the carefree spirit of them. And then through the Armagh Rhymers, Dara Valley introduced me to Jimmy and Michael, Patrick, and everyone on the call. So what I love about is the connection okay? I love all the people we're meeting, all like-minded people and all the connections we're making. And it's so stimulating, even at any stage in your life, to meet new people and to be enthused and to be inspired as well. So I look forward to all the work and the excitement on the way up to A100, Patrick, there. And so look forward to this evening, Joan, and the education program's a great idea to keep us connected through the hibernation months of the winter, and then we'll be out for the spring festival then next year. So thank you all.
Thank you.
I should apologize to Bridget. I should have recognized her. I was delighted to meet everyone at the summer school this year, which I finally got to attend, so that was cool. I'm a retired person in Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis. I first ran into AE. I was an English major, so I love all this stuff. Patrick taught a course on AE, or maybe two, a few years ago during the pandemic on Zoom, so I met Jim and Michael in that course, or those courses. And I was really struck by his journalism that we read in those courses and how encouraging he was to the brand new Irish Republic and the emergence of Ireland and getting their independence. And it was just really inspiring to read that sort of journalism and see how he played such an important role, and he was so humble about it too. So. And my dad's first cousin worked in the cooperative movement, so.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think we've heard from everyone. Am I correct? I think so. Great. I'm grateful to Patrick, our president. A few years ago, I invited him to my university, University of Wisconsin, to speak on Lady Gregory. And I will never forget the moment when Patrick said something about AE, and he said it in a way where I knew I should know what he was saying, and I didn't. And I thought, oh no, I'm an academic. I think I'm supposed to know this. And I said, I don't know AE. And that really stuck with me. I went home that evening and pulled books from my shelves. And it was the strangest thing because he was everywhere. He was in my books. I couldn't see him. I could see Yeats. I could see Lady Gregory. I couldn't see AE. So I am really grateful to Patrick and to all of you because I am on this amazing journey of really unfolding, and I keep learning, and life gets brighter because of AE. So thank you. We have today an opportunity to dive into AE's writings, and I thought what we would do is this very much is not a lecture format. This is a conversation. So if you would just take a moment and think about the three readings, the introduction, dealing with Theosophy. Of course, that wasn't written by AE, but it was the editors of The Descent of the Gods preparing us for his writings and giving us a lens from which to look at AE's life and his writings. And then the two readings that we looked at, or we will be looking at, if you would think about the three readings right now and just take a moment, I'd like you to think about one passage, and it could be from any of the readings. Maybe let's really focus on AE's writing for purposes of time. One passage or sentence or even word that stuck with you, that you thought about, that maybe inspired you, made you want to learn more. And then what I thought we'd do a little later to wind things up is we'll get into the confusion and the questions. But I thought we'd start out with something really positive where he was speaking to you and it meant something and it made you connect with something, or it made you think about something, maybe in a new way, or again, maybe he inspired you. His words spoke to you. So anyone, if you want to just tell us what the reading was, written by AE, what the passage was, or even the sentence, or even the word, just start us off. I'm really curious what spoke to you.
Yeah, I can start, Joan, if you want.
Sure.
So in the Speech of the Gods, what's really interesting is the way, we have to remember the legacy of the Enlightenment through the 18th century, to the rise of rationalism, empiricism, Descartes and John Locke, this heavy kind of cutting, these theories of knowledge that really sort of uprooted spiritual consciousness and really cut it to shreds. He's writing in the 1880s in an Ireland that is recovering from the famine, but he's sort of a kind of an uprooted Protestant down in Dublin, and he's trying to find spiritual consciousness, that sense of the divine, and he's taking on Darwinian language in Speech of the Gods, the opening lines. And that's that whole sense of which now becomes kind of a common way people talk of spiritual evolution. That sense in the opening there that, he's talking about the Darwinian system of evolution, that sense that we're trying to evolve spiritually. And what's radical about AE is through Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky's Theosophy, we have a kind of a new mythic kind of cloak woven from many different threads of Eastern Hindu. Some of it, to be honest, completely faked and plagiarized by Blavatsky. She's a kind of a trickster, spiritual writer. But she's bringing in Indian, Hindu, Buddhist ideas of reincarnation as a counter to that materialistic suppression of spiritual consciousness. So AE is very radically taking on board Theosophy as a mythical language and vocabulary and using it to argue for a return of spiritual consciousness in a very radical way, not in any sense of the trickery of Blavatsky. AE is Blavatsky sort of filtered with the trickery filtered out, and authenticity, mysticism, and the voice of the poet filtered in. So it's very powerful to us still today, as we kind of thread the minefield around Blavatsky to kind of get into the whole sense of a reduced spiritual consciousness is trying to be reborn through this esoteric engagement with the wisdom of the East and some of the wisdom of the West through science and Darwin. And we're hearing the young voice of George Russell. And this first piece is written in cooperation with Charles Johnston, who later went on to become a translator of Sanskrit and FTS. It doesn't spring to mind at the moment. So yeah, it's a very radical piece right away. And in reading stuff that's esoteric like this, there is a minefield we always have to navigate, but we have to be careful to see whether we think it reworks as reboosting spiritual consciousness. And I see it my way to me, I find it very interesting because it is kind of very mythic. And so I do find that persuasive.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, he does say right away in the first paragraph, the Theosophical doctrine, and then he mentions the Darwinian system of evolution. So if you haven't read this, Blavatsky's great works, The Secret Doctrine and so on, he's showing you he's been studying this.
I spoke, as I said, I spoke about the hero and the man, and he almost brings you to, that you have to be humble, humility, sacrifice, to be a hero. And I love that idea about sacrificing yourself. And really, when he was dying, he burned everything that he owned, because he more. And you said yourself there that you had missed him. And one of the reasons you had missed him was because he didn't want to be famous. It was more about his teachings or his philosophy or the philosophy that he was passing on, that he had learned. That's what his life was really about. It wasn't about his fame or that was a trivial thing to him. It was passing on that great humility and the service of others and finding the hero in everybody else, and if you think of the heroes that he discovered in people, like, some of the greatest heroes this country has ever produced, and even dare I say it, there would have been no Mary Poppins, the hero Mary Poppins, without him either. So yeah, I'll let somebody else speak now.
In his piece on the song and its fountains, I thought I tried to dabble a little in poetry, not very successfully, but his description of a poem, a thought born in a sphere of being behind a dream, I thought was fantastic. And in that same piece where he describes the piece about the child on the grass, about the whole entities of good and evil and how the soul and spirit develop, but he refers to darkness and light in a very interesting way, and that darkness says to light that I was here before you. Very interesting. Thanks.
I love that aspect also, that it was the older dark that he gravitated towards, regardless of the light. And the light is such a prominent feature in his work, of course, but the darkness holds more intrigue and more learning, it seems, and more connection. For me, that's most important in that piece. I also like the aspect of the other piece. I can't remember which one actually, was talking about the language of the gods, basically the kind of pronunciation of the ah, and for us in this part of the world, that pronunciation of ah rather than a is such a significant thing. I'm not, an Irish speaker myself, unfortunately, but I grew up in West Belfast and we were taught to pronounce our ahs in that way. And it became a defining factor later on in years, of course. But you see the likes of Kneecap in their songs pronounce CEARTA, RTA. It's a specific, it has a political element too, of course, but it's just the way it works with the likes of the kind of the chanting as well, the kind of that the brace of those sounds, the whole vibration encompasses everything. It's the Brahman, it's the entirety. And I just really enjoyed that kind of aspect that, AE definitely brought into his use of language. So I thought it was quite well illuminated.
Just to keep the conversation flowing very quickly, I'm going to just try to get in here, Joan. I only read two of the three pieces, and something that struck me in the first reading, which was the two editors talking about the important themes. I asked myself a question. I am a professionally qualified librarian, but I've also got qualifications in education, but I'm not an educator. You are, Patrick is, and perhaps there are other people here as well, teaching at third level. And something that struck me as important was the lack of visual explanations here. I would have found it very helpful. I'd love to hear if this is not irrelevant. If it is, just please tell me. But what you and Patrick have to say on how you would teach AE to beginners at third level, maybe even undergraduate level, first timers looking at AE. And they were talking about hierarchies a lot, and I just yearned for more help. Maybe somebody drawing things for me. And I do know that in the 19th century, I forget his name, but there was an Irishman who produced a groundbreaking work. He explained Euclid by very interesting images, and most of his work was actually images explaining Euclid. So that is just one thought, but I will say to you, I found intriguing, as just a parting point. I know reincarnation has been mentioned, and karma we hear about a lot, but in the is this the first reading? No, this is page 18. So this must be the introductory talk by the editors. I know, Joan, you asked for our observations on AE to save time, but I'll just leave it at this. Although I was fascinated in the speech of the gods, I think it was. I'm much more interested now in all these sounds, and I found that a fascinating piece. I'll have to read it again. All the concepts related to the sounds. But no, the post-mortem states, I found that very fascinating. How we all are our own judge and executioner, hell, purgatory. I just wanted to say I found that fascinating. So they're just some offerings. I'm going to go into silent mode now so other people might be able to speak in the limited time we have.
I can speak to Hugh's question, Joan, and then have you speak too. I mean, trying to teach AE is a fascinating because basically what it is he's sort of like a waterfall. and all kinds of rivers have trickled into the river of AE's mind before the cascade hits you on the page, and that he is very studious and very scholarly. And I would say one of the main rivers is H.P. Blavatsky's Theosophical works, Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, which are big, weighty, complex weaves of Eastern wisdom and Western science and wisdom. So Theosophy is the big river. But also he's read before Blavatsky the mystical classics of the East, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and then particularly in the Western tradition, the Neoplatonic writings of Plotinus. And Plotinus is himself another waterfall summing up ancient Greek philosophy in the centuries after the Romans took over. So a figure like Plotinus, AE is kind of like an Irish Plotinus. Plotinus is a mystic himself, but he's also someone who sums up centuries and centuries. I mean, the fundamental problem with spiritual consciousness is, what is our theory of knowledge? How do we know that reincarnation or gods or Atmans and karma? How do we know that? We are in a modern, technological, skeptical, empirical society, right? We're on Zoom, right? So these claims always have to be framed around other theories of knowledge. And so what AE is doing is his mystical intuitions are highly informed by new answers to that. The problem with our technological society is it's reductionistic. We lose our soul. We get confused, right? So we have other theories of knowledge to try and heal that. And AE's mysticism is noetic. Noetic means it looks into the deep, ineffable insights of reality. But he's also, while mystical in himself, he's highly scholarly, highly studious. And so he is, he's one of these guys where there's a lot of context, right? That's what I'd say. And the context, though, is really fun, is really enjoyable, because these are fundamental questions all of us have as to how can we have a noetic relationship with reality? How can we have mystical experiences? How can we awaken divine consciousness? How can we have a fulfilled and whole? How can we be whole and not fragmented and wounded by an overly reductionistic, cynical, materialistic culture, which is unfortunately what we're always in, particularly with the rise of capitalism, et cetera. Joan, what would you say to that? Because it's a really interesting question. Hugh, as usual, always great questions.
Hugh, one of the things I did earlier is I started making a PowerPoint, and then I ended up throwing it in the trash bin, digital trash bin, because I realized what I was doing was trying to deliver information, which is not what AE is asking. He doesn't want us doing that, and nor did Blavatsky. This isn't all supposed to be, I have the truth and live in the intellectual sphere. I mean, that's part of it, but there's got to be intuition, and there's got to be you alone with your thoughts and your feelings and connecting. And maybe it's going to a place and being in the grass or on top of a mountain and having something speak to you. But a lot of this is, it's beyond me being able to put it on a PowerPoint or say in a nice, neat and tidy way, here are the 5 points you need to take away from today. Though I do think what's been really fun for me is I've been listening to all of these voices and writing down some words. Like Jimmy said, sacrifice. And that made me think about the idea of these enlightened beings, the Mahatmas, the masters. They have that's the ultimate sacrifice. They're not interfering, they're guiding. But they're at such a high level that they're sacrificing everything to help us bring light back into this. We are definitely in the Iron Age. I mean, look at the daily news. But what we're doing today, these are sparks of the Golden Age, moments where we might leave today not even knowing it, but little seeds have been planted that are going to grow into something potentially, or not, or maybe it'll be a month from now or 6 months or a year, but something will happen if we are patient and if we keep working at this and keep reading. And that's why I'm so excited to be talking about what speaks to you, what confuses you. I'm confused by a lot of the reading I did, but in a good way, because I'm thinking maybe this confusion is telling me I'm approaching it from, am I looking for golden nuggets of information? Am I looking for specific examples that I think I have to memorize? And I'm not sure that's what it's about. It's about using both your intellect and your whole being and letting your intuition wake up and start working again. And your imagination, of course, is part of that. So I don't know where this is leading. How would I teach that to undergraduates? At the moment, I don't know, but I'm not teaching that to undergraduates. But in a way, I am. But that's another story.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was extremely interesting, the response, and I'm glad that you didn't kick me out to touch in terms of my veering off your question. But just one other very mini point. When I was a student sitting in a class at postgraduate level with people from, I learned a huge lesson from this. Smart people from Japan and China and other countries who did not have English as their first language. We were a group away from the formal curriculum, and I was sort of getting a bit impatient with them. But then I realized what their approach was to the text they were reading. They looked at every word. And this is something we have to do, I believe, I say with due humility to all the people around me, we have to look at every word. And part of my background is law, so I'm very much into drafting documents and writing and rewriting anything I produce many, many times over. But I learned a huge lesson from those, if I can call them foreign students. Just a point.
Thank you.
Could I just come in? It's really interesting to hear everybody speak, and you're marshalling it all very well, Joan. Thank you very much. When I really genuinely love introductions to books, and sometimes I'll only read the introduction and come back maybe later. But the introduction that you shared is wonderful. And the two words that jumped out at me was this concept of soul memory and also the golden age. And it struck me that if ever we needed a golden age to be all around us, it's now, because we're slaves to fact, or the dead cage of fact. John Donahue called it. And it's not that facts aren't important, but as you rightly said, Joan, and Patrick always alludes to this, that there's something beyond, reducing everything to black, white, right, wrong. And it's what leads the human race to loggerheads, this right, wrong, a binary approach to most things. And, I think, this notion of the soul memory, if we were only prepared to slow down and listen to what comes up to the surface from the soul memory, and we're all too busy, or we're all terrified of being bored or giving ourselves enough time to receive what the soul memory has. And I'm more guilty than most at filling every nanosecond with things. But if anything, A.E. Russell, he didn't avoid difficult areas. He took on the big questions, and he was a match for them. And I think it's going to be a long time before we all realize that AE was really preparing the way for the next golden age, because just there's optimism in the golden age. There's a special kind of light. It's not a harsh light that's an interrogatory light. It's a more a golden light, and no matter when we discuss A.E. Russell, I think he'll always create space for everybody.
Thank you for that. I'm going to jump in right now and let you know I can't believe this. 1 hour has passed. I don't know how that's possible, but it has. So we said this would be 1 hour. If you need to leave, that's fine. I think we should talk just a little more and then just be respectful of time. But I'm aware that, wow, this is fleeting. So maybe 5 or 10 more minutes, and if you need to go now. But one thing I'm going to ask, if you do have to leave early, is would you send me, you don't have to if you don't want to, but would you send me an email with your favorite passage, and also an email with maybe the passage or sentence or even word that confused you? And I'll collect those, and if you're willing, let me know if I can share it with other people. But I think it would be very interesting to see what other people say about that. And if you want to say a few words about it, that would be great. And so if you're open to that, there's no hard deadline, but I'll just create a little document and save that. But I feel like we've just scratched the surface here, but that's okay. There'll be many more conversations to come.
Joan, can I speak? Can you hear me?
Please.
Yes. What Raymond said there really rang a bell with me. If you read A.E.'s poetry, they're not actually speaking of his time. They're either speaking to a past tense or they're speaking to a future tense. And there's a couple of lines here out of a poetry book here. One of his poems called Dust. And this is only the first verse of it. I heard them in their sadness say, the earth rebukes the thought of God. We are but embers wrapped in clay, a little nobler than the sod. I'll just study off another one here, immortality. And it sort of puts it all into perspective. We must pass like smoke or live within the spirits of fire, but we can no more than smoke until the flame return. If our thoughts have changed to dream, or will unto desire, as smoke we vanish through the fire may burn. Now, what Raymond said is exactly right. You'd almost think he was speaking of today. And we've lost a lot of people. They believe in God, but do they really believe in God? I believe that they believe in themselves, or like the reality as it is today. Amen.
Thank you. So losing sight of cooperation, that we're all united, we're all interconnected.
Yep.
Yeah, I think people have bought into commercialism and capitalism, and they've lost that mystical word. And you were saying about the Iron Age, and I think that's what he was talking about. The Iron Age was a soulless age, and so.
So I really wish I could be offering all of you something to drink and eat. That would be nice. I could be walking around the room.
That's funny. Paul and Jimmy and Raymond talking about the loss of a golden age, and yet we hear this morning from President Trump that it's a new golden age for for the Middle East. But anyhow, moving quickly forward, I'll just give you a quick reaction to the three pieces which I read. First piece by the editors, Introduction to A's Mysticism, found it very hard going, and I'm going to have to go back and read it all over again with a dictionary at my side. I thought that was a tough read. The second, with Charles Johnson, wasn't tough to read, but you wonder what they were at. Taking Fiona's point about and so on and on, but nonetheless, the guys have got to the Aryan roots of sound, and the sounds we made either when we descended from the gods or descended from monkeys, whichever. I just find it a bit bizarre that you can sort of say, well, of course, the letter K is about, sharpness and cutting, and has an associated color yellow and an associated shape triangle. I just think some of that requires a lot more elucidation. The third piece from the Song and its Fountains, I thought it's very good, but it's a brilliant thought of A's that everything has its roots away somewhere in your distant past, whether it's an action or a thought or whatever it might be. And in fact, it was an interesting wee thing that he comments about his own, he comments very sort of gingerly about his own kindness, but I thought his lack of selfishness derived from his study of the likes of the Bhagavad Gita and that type of thing, the teaching there. But he says here that as a boy, he remembered a dying woman who wept for the fact that she couldn't go and attend to someone else who was unwell. And he said that kind of shook him when he was a boy. And he said something like, how was it? A quarter of it. Yeah. And although the mood was too high for me to sustain, I passed from it too many egos, and yet this was the starting point of whatever selflessness was in my life. So his own generosity of spirit and kindness was rooted in an experience. It was only a dream to a vision from his boyhood.
I think it's a Lurgan thing, Michael.
I don't.
Well, that's happened to him in Lurgan.
Joan, it's really interesting to hear other people's response to his writings, because whenever I had finished my dissertation way over 45 years ago, I put AE away. I kept coming back to bits and pieces because I was picking up, as everybody has said, he is everywhere. But I have to say, whenever I was reading a lot of his mysticism and a lot of the Blavatsky stuff, I got lost because I couldn't understand. I was that cynical reductionist person. But I can remember there was one passage that I had read as part of my research, and it was A's, where he had given a description. I think it was I don't know, I think it was Manon MacLear, where he had been walking in the Wicklow Mountains, and Manon MacLear had appeared in this dream type waking dream state, and had gone over the top of him with all the group around him, and this magical group passed over him, and the sort of feelings that brought out in him. And having read that at the time, it actually brought back to me memories of whenever we were youngsters in the early 60s. We used to take a house up in near Downings. And I discovered years later that AE actually used to walk Ross's Strand, which is out near Roskill. And we used to get up early in the morning, and we used to go looking for fairies. And as children, 6, 7, we believed that the fairies were actually there. And having read the passage where he experienced the waking vision, it reminded me of what I think what was going on with us as children. Because whenever we were out looking for the fairies, we could never find them. But we always had this sense that they were above us and around us. The say were in the trees and the stones. And when the rabbits would have run and hid, we would think, there's the fairies going. So that sort of sense of spiritualism, mysticism stuck with me, even though I was and still am to some degree quite reductionist and quite cynical.
Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing.
I think that's that section on the colors and the sounds on the speech of the gods. It's interesting the connection to the ancient Irish poetry, poems like Salt and Iran, where they talk about the colors of the winds, and that was quite extensively used by Yeats. And definitely there was communication between Yeats and AE on this, but they done quite extensive work on, because color and wind don't actually go together in the English language, but there were specific colors of different winds blowing from different directions, which is much better explained in the Irish language. So I think that's very much part of that and what he was getting at. But once you grasp the concept of the color of the wind, the white wind, the speckled wind, I mean, concepts which are very difficult to grasp, how a wind could be speckled. But these were the kind of words are still not very well translated, in fact, quite poorly translated and still being worked on. So it's a fascinating subject. Thanks.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing Mangum McGann would have been talking about, and it's funny. When you said that, it reminded me of Charlie Lansbury's song about the wee blind fella, and he says, "What color is the wind?" Yeah.
It is 10 after. Why don't we go 5 more minutes if you don't mind? Because I think this is getting very interesting with sound and color. A note I made to myself when I was reading about the sound was I started thinking about the symbolist poet Rimbaud, because every vowel had a color and a sound, and it seemed like he was trying to take us somewhere with all of that. And then I ran to Henry Summerfield's Myriad-Minded Man, and it's early in his book, chapter 2, where he talks about AE picking AE. And he says it's the first sound, as we know, of AEON, the mystic word. But I started thinking, that's really interesting. Maybe we say his name, but as we're saying his name, maybe something's happening to us just by saying AE. And maybe I shouldn't be saying the harsh A. Maybe it should be that softer A.
Well, I come across one of his poems, or at least one of them anyway, and it didn't rhyme unless you said the A or like an A, like a Lurgan. Well, maybe it's all people, but it's certainly a Lurgan man. You'd have to say it like an A, like a Lurgan A for it to rhyme. I can't remember. I think I said it to you, Michael, about that poem, and it was one of his poems. Unless you had said it like a Lurgan A, it wouldn't have rhymed.
At primary school, if I could just come in briefly to build on Fiona's point there, at primary school, and Marianne and myself went to the same school, but I was way ahead of her, age-wise. We learned...
Not anymore.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then I think it was Sesame Street that changed that all to ABC. But yeah, it's from the Irish language, that version of the first letter of the Roman alphabet.
That's it. And I did learn that, Raymond, in West Belfast, and my sister still says it, as a matter of fact. I think Sesame Street might have been in my introduction to that as well. That just the alphabet, the song, but it does have I suppose an aspect of politicization now, but like you say, it's the way you interpret that, and in the poems, the way it's said in the poems, it doesn't work unless you do that. It's almost like a spell or an incantation. And when it comes to the aspects of the synesthesia, that to me brings back the called the fin de siècle, Arabors, and like you say, Rimbaud, and the kind of French symbolists as well. I mean, that whole thing was happening, relatively recently, and myself, I have a part of my background is in psychoanalytic theory and particularly Jungian. So this is a whole kind of I can't read this without thinking in terms of Jungian archetypes and symbols and the darkness and the light and the shadow, as being aspects of that kind of hero's journey of individuation. So I mean, it's just so rich and so full. I mean, an hour just 45 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes flies by. So yeah, full of intrigue.
But I just, in the time we have left, point to an editing concern I have in the introductory chapter, page 13, when the two editors refer to the concept of it. I don't want to be veering away from the very nice discussion we're having, but I just want to point to everybody that on line 29, I think from memory of that page, they identify it with a capital I for the first time, because the reference to it is at the beginning of each sentence. And I don't like the sentence which reads, it is called a substance principle because it becomes increasingly substantial and differentiated on the plane of manifestation, while it essentially remains a homogeneous principle in abstract space and eternal duration. They use the word it there 3 times. And the second and third its are small its. So I would love to hear what the real experts have to say on that particular paragraph and the concept of it. And have they slipped up? Have they, the great editors, made a bit of a shambles of the second sentence in that paragraph, using the word it 3 times?
I think we'll return to that, but I am looking at that paragraph right now, and if I were an editor, I would say you're using it too much. As an English teacher, I always try to get my students to understand the basic parts of speech, even at the university level, and that idea of a pronoun pro for the noun. But what gets slippery here is we're using language to talk about something that maybe language can't quite reach. So they're struggling, I think. So they use a lot of it. But thank you. Point well taken. If there should be another edition of this, someone should consider what they're doing with it. There are a lot of its.
And Joan, Joan, sorry for interrupting. The reason I didn't thank you during the session was I had thanked you earlier today by email.
Oh, no, I'm grateful to all of you.
Tonight's salon. So I'm going back to silent mode.
No, I don't want, but thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. I think what we'll do now is I'm going to open this up to, again, if you would send me your responses. And I'd also like to welcome all of you. If you think you'd like to meet again, I could reach out to some of you and say, here's a group of people that would like to keep talking about these texts. I know it's not part of our official program, but it is part of our program because there's more I think we'd like to dig into and discuss. So if it works with you, if you want to, of course you don't have to, or if you just want to call me up someday and just talk to me, I'd love to talk to you about this. It doesn't have to be a Zoom. I feel like we've just started. So thank you very much for helping us set the stage for the educational programming that we're doing for A.E. George William Russell, someone that is speaking to us today and I hope continues to speak to us for a very long time because the world needs him and it needs all of us talking about him and remembering the bright light that he is. So with that, I think I'm going to just ask you all to, have a good night. If it's nighttime in Ireland and in America, go get yourself a nice late lunch. Thank you for being here. It really means a lot that you were part of this inaugural salon.
Thank you very much, Joan. It's
Thank you very much.
what you're doing, you know. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.
Bye.
Salon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Miss.
I'll wait to see everyone goes. I'm opening my yellow door. Until next time.